So researchers at UVM Center for Research on Vermont, myself included, have been collecting this data on Vermont's town spending on police services over the course of the past several weeks. You can see that there are 98 towns included in that data. Some of our major findings have been that overall spending across the state is down 0.45%. And with that, 7 towns saw an increase above 10%, and 7 saw decreases of more than 20%.
However, Vermont's a pretty diverse state. We've got a lot of different towns, a lot of different sizes, a lot of different areas with varying population densities. And I think it part of the conversation just around police in Vermont, it can't be had without looking at some of these smaller, more rural towns, because they're just as much of a part of the state as some of the bigger cities.
I was surprised to see that we've done this is now the third time, and this is the first time that we're showing an overall decrease. Now, whether that's driven by some of the larger towns having sharper decreases, but overall, there seems to be a potential slowing of the rate of increase that Vermont towns are spending on their police.
It's a remarkable difference, because for this year, it's an average of negative 0.45% that it's decreasing, which may not seem like a lot, but in previous years, the average between different fiscal years was, I believe, somewhere around 3.5% between 2019 and 2020. And then between 2020 and 2021, it was actually around 6.5%. So between last year's fiscal year budget and this one, we're actually, the fact that we're able to see a negative average is pretty significant to me.
The biggest surprise to me was, in the process of data collection, and just the fact that it was not easy to find a lot of these numbers, which seems interesting because, these are the proposed budgets for fiscal year 2022, and they're going to be voted on at town meeting in the next few months.
I mean, I really want to second what Valentina said. I'm really curious about kind of what some of the underlying mechanisms are that are driving this trend, and especially potentially looking at call volumes and how, what the purpose of those calls were, whether that's shifted over the past few years some, and I know COVID may be impacting that in some ways, but I'm just curious to see whether or not there are changes within how the police are, whether there are changes to what the police are responding to that are driving some of these budget changes, or if it's coming more from the town deciding to allocate some of this money elsewhere.
Something that the Center for Research on Vermont is, trying to do is see how these national conversations are playing out at a local level. And, that's why these smaller Vermont towns that might not get as much attention, might have smaller populations, are still important to consider in the conversation. And, that's coming from so much of a larger scale with local and state governments across the country spend a total of somewhere around $100 billion. So looking at that funneled down into, at this small level here might give us some more insight.